it goes right, it's a slice. If it goes left, it's a hook. If it goes straight, it's a miracle. This is Out of Bounds. If it's happening in the world of golf, we're talking about it. Coverage, debate, discussion, pro golf and local golf. Let's do it. This is Out of Bounds. And here are your hosts, Nate Sharman and Josh Durso.
All right, welcome back to the Out of Bounds podcast. I'm Josh Durso, joined by Nate Sharman on the Monday after a soggy Masters Championship. Man, Nate, what a weekend. Absolutely awesome weekend for golf, right?
Yeah, a lot of fun. You know, Jon Rahm is your 2023 Masters champion. And you're right. It was certainly a soggy weekend on Saturday, a little bit of it on Sunday morning, too. We ended up getting at least about 27 holes of golf in on Sunday. So what a marathon golf day it was, especially for that final group. We'll talk a little bit more about how that even made it more of a marathon with some slow play on Sunday. We'll get into that. But Jon Rahm captures his second major championship of his career and his fourth win this season. Now has amassed over $13 million in earnings for this year on tour. What an unbelievable performance by Jon Rahm. Looked like it was Brooks Koepka's tournament to win, Friday into Saturday into Sunday morning. Brooks faltered, shot 75 on that final Sunday. Jon Rahm took advantage of that, shot 69 to secure the victory. And it was pretty drama-free down the stretch as Jon Rahm had a pretty good lead on the last few holes.
The one thing that I kept thinking of as we were coming down the stretch there, seeing Brooks start to falter, had he not and had we seen Brooks win by a couple stroke margin, I think everybody's focus would have turned back to Friday when he got to play in absolutely gorgeous weather in the morning. And then everybody else just had to play in a monsoon, a few hours later.
Jon Rahm got that bad draw. He had to play in that quote unquote monsoon, right? And he I think it was you lost like 2 or 3 strokes on the field if you had that early late draw where you had to play in some of those soggier conditions, like you were saying, Josh. And Jon Rahm overcame that. He overcame a 4-putt on the first hole and he made double bogey.
Insane.
It just didn't seem like there wasn't much he could overcome this week and winning the Masters.
I think it kind of puts to rest the comparison between him and Scottie Scheffler.
Yep.
I think when it comes down to it, they're the most similar in terms of, how good they are in overall sense. But when we're talking about who the most dominant golfer is in golf right now, it's Jon Rahm, and that's it.
It's so cool with Rahm, too. Between Rahm and Scheffler, they just both do it so differently. Like if you were to take 2 really elite golfers and 2 opposites of each other, you have Jon Rahm on one side, Scheffler on the other. Scottie Scheffler, not a guy that really shows much emotion. Jon Rahm has done a really good job kind of channeling in his emotions in the last few years. That's something that plagued him early in his career.
Yeah.
Scottie, though, I don't want to talk too much about him in the Masters, but we saw him really showing his emotions during the tournament. He was oftentimes, getting really mad at himself, whether it be himself, his caddy, or his other coaches, which is something really interesting on Scottie Scheffler. So definitely something we should keep track of here as we plague through this PGA Tour season. Kind of a little bit different Scottie last week.
Yeah, and I also think that that's the Scottie that we're going to see more of while the expectations are as great as they are. I think also, being the defending Masters champion coming in, that adds to it a little bit. I'll be very interested to see how all of these guys, your top 10, top 15, how they look this coming weekend. Rebounding right off of a major, right into an elevated event.
Right.
Will Scottie, in this case, go back to kind of that carefree, very relaxed approach that we've seen him carry over the last 3 months? Or will it be a bit of that on edge, not quite comfortable, always a little, almost seemed agitated throughout the weekend?
Right.
Is that going to be what we see? So it'll be interesting to watch.
Don't usually see a lot of the players having to play the week after the Masters, right? And this year we got an elevated event at Harbour Town for the RBC Heritage, which we'll get into. I hinted at that slow play earlier in the episode, Josh, and I kind of want to talk about it because a lot of problems swerving around Patrick Cantlay. He was in that second to last group with Victor Hovland on Sunday afternoon, played really well in the morning to kind of get himself in that spot. and they played about a 5-hour round. I would say the leaders, Brooks and Rahm, had to wait on every single shot, especially on that back nine. They were waiting at least 5 minutes on a lot of tee boxes too. So that's something I think is a real problem if the game can go that way. And it seems like Cantlay, he's done this kind of pace of play issue before. And I'd love to get your thoughts on it. I know you don't like slow play, Josh.
I don't like slow play, and I think it's bad for the game of golf, and worse for the game of golf when professionals are the ones exhibiting that behavior. It sets a bad example. Now, Patrick Cantlay seems to be the guy that, a lot of folks have pointed to who watch a ton of tour golf, and he is one of the offenders, we'll say.
Right.
It just comes down to the tour needing to step up and enforce the rules that exist. We've got rules. We don't need more rules when it's affecting the group behind them. And I also saw quite a bit late last night and then this morning, some of the in between TV shots of Victor Hovland, and it looked like it was starting to affect him as well.
Yeah, he had some bad body language moments towards Cantlay.
Yeah, and I think that's just kind of the sign when it's not just, the guys that are, leading the tournament and have everything on the line behind them. When it's the guy they're actually playing with, that's when you really, I think you got to figure out a way to start enforcing those types of things, because, that is just how it doesn't create animosity between players. Like that visible animosity that winds up bubbling over in other types of is beyond me. Like, I honestly don't know, because it's real money for these people.
Right.
It's not like, we're not talking about like the weekend skins game at your Muni. Like, this is their livelihood. So I don't know. I can't see a scenario where the PGA Tour can keep looking the other way on this. I don't know. What do you think? Like, is it just an enforcement issue now?
Thing. Yeah, I agree with that. They have to find a way to put these guys on the clock, right? And it's got to be enforced, and it's hard to make that fair. I know that. I think that's why they struggle with it, especially at the Masters. Yeah. But they got to make sure these guys are playing. I mean, you take a look at Brooks. That's a guy who he's talked about slow play and how he doesn't like it. You watch the broadcast, he gets up and hits it. He's pretty much ready all the time. And it's might be a reason why he shot that big 75 number on Sunday. I don't really want to direct, all that towards the slow play, but it definitely gets in his head a little bit too. So one thing was cool about Brooks. He was talking about it a little bit after the round. Don't have the direct quote, but he didn't really point fingers directly. He was more disappointed with his play, obviously. So he's not going to blame it on anything. But he said, I think Jon Rahm went to the bathroom 7 or 8 times during the round. Yeah. Just because they had so much time in between some tee boxes where, John's trying to keep the focus on. So he's using the bathroom 7 or 8 times. I love that quote. You're always going to get good stuff out of Brooks. So, that's definitely a really big problem. I think they got to figure out.
He's honest, if nothing else.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Speaking of Brooks, we need to talk about all these live guys and how well they played, obviously. But the big question, I think, for coming out of this weekend for Brooks Koepka, even though he didn't win, is does he regret going to live? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot. I think it was after the second round, he said his decision would have been tougher if he was healthy at the time. At that time that live offer came through. Yep. He just got off a knee surgery, so you don't really know if you're ever going to be better again. You kind of have that down mindset. Yeah. And I don't think I want to say that he regrets his decision, because we know Brooks is that guy that doesn't really care to play a lot of PGA Tour events. I don't really know if he would be big on these elevated events, right? Having to play this many times a year. So now he can go over to live, play a little bit less golf. We're seeing that schedule expand a little bit though, but play a little bit less golf, come play in the majors, contend, and just kind of do his Brooks Koepka thing. So I don't know if he necessarily regrets it, but I would love to see that decision and what it would be made if he was fully healthy, if he got asked, today, if he was joining live. I bet you he had a lot of fun playing against some of the best guys in the world this weekend, but I would love to see it if he would come back to the PGA Tour, obviously, but I don't think he regrets it. I really don't.
That was, what my big takeaway from this whole weekend with the live guys was just that, how natural it felt, how normal it felt to have all of them back in the fold. And just, after the first couple days of pressers, like Tuesday, Wednesday, we're all wrapped up. Media days were wrapped up Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whether it was Phil Mickelson, whether it was Brooks, any of those guys, was just normal. It was like,
Right.
we wound back the clock 2 years, and it was just normal run of the mill. They were out there, they were playing, they competed, they played incredibly well. And, at the end of the day, we got exactly what we expected to get out of these guys who were, and obviously still are, among the best in the world.
Right.
So, it was more of a feel thing to me, looking at a guy like Brooks. Does he regret his decision going to live? No, I agree. I don't think he regrets his decision going to live, but I think all of these guys might have gotten a little bit of a taste of what they're missing. And I think you heard it a lot, especially in some of Phil's remarks after Sunday. It was very much a different tone. Like, we've heard these guys with almost a combative tone, toward the tour and toward, the guys that are playing on this side. And it was the exact opposite of that. It was appreciative. It was respectful. It was almost like, I don't want to call it a victory lap, but it felt a bit like, in Phil's case, at least, the old guard paying respect to the thing that he, spent his entire life playing. Like, the Masters was so important to him for so long. And obviously it still is. He played incredibly well. But yeah, it's just, I think in that regard, as a golf fan, I was a little bit disappointed because, you're coming out of Sunday and you want so badly to see all of these guys playing next week in the RBC, because, maybe not all 18 who played would be in that top, 50 plus ties that would be considered for elevated events, but a good chunk of them would.
Yeah.
And it would be better for the game of golf if they were there. And that's all there is to it. That's all there is to it.
I mean, we've said this on this podcast a lot, but you can't look at the top 50 guys in the world and just exclude 4 or 5 of them for no reason, just because they play in the Live Tour. It's like you said, Josh, it's bad for the game of golf, I think. And having these guys was a good breath of fresh air. You take a look at the numbers. I think there was 3 of them in the top 5 between Reed, Mickelson, and Koepka. Yep. I think 12 of 18 of them made the cut. Cameron Smith was a little bit around. He's played kind of poor towards the weekend.
Yeah.
And we made this joke, right, that how are they going to be able to play 4 rounds, right? Well, Mickelson and Reed both played really well on Sunday. You can make that argument for Brooks that he kind of ran out of gas, right, for that 4th round, but
got tired of waiting.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that could be part of it. But Phil with that 65, what a magical round, especially when he ripped off a bunch of those birdies on the back nine at Augusta. It was so freaking fun to watch him play and watch him play well. He looks quite a bit different, doesn't he?
Oh I mean, immensely different. I mean, obviously he shed a ton of weight.
He can still play golf, that's for sure.
Some have said he's aged a bit. I look at him as more of like a, he seems to be getting into that phase of life where you start to realize that you have to take care of yourself.
Right.
Can't just do whatever you want. And he wants to try to extend himself as long as he can. He did make an interesting remark afterward that when he was going through that sort of gratitude list that he had after Sunday's round, pointing out, and I think this was pointing toward Tiger, where he made mention of the fact that he hasn't had any serious injuries that have, really like made it difficult for him to maintain himself so that he can continue to play well into his 50s. So I think, in general, it's a cool thing to see. And hopefully, I do hope now, especially after this past week, that we get to a point where the live players can cross over and play in the tour, or there is some kind of hybrid series of events where we intermingle, because it's the best product.
One more question on Live before we move on. Do you think this showing from Live validates them at all as a golf league?
You know what? I thought about this a bit, and I don't think it changes anything.
I don't think so either.
I think your hardcore anti-live folk, your hardcore pro-live folk are going to feel exactly as they did before this weekend happened. I don't think it changes everything. I think, like politics, most people who were in the middle on this, who didn't really feel super strongly one way or another, saw what everybody saw, which was that they're still among the best in the world and they can still hang. Does that last forever? Does Brooks Koepka continue to be able to play with the best in the world if he's only playing against the PGA Tour guys 4 times a year? And can younger players come up through the live system and be able to compete with the PGA Tour guys? Those are like the 2 questions that I have, not so much about current live guys being able to compete because they were just competing against these guys last year or the year before that.
Right. And let's keep talking about these young players, right? We had an amateur play well in this event. Sam Bennett, the Texas A&M student athlete, he shot 68-68 the first 2 days, played with Scotty Scheffler, right? You know, the winner of the previous Masters gets to play with the U.S. men's amateur champion. So we're all interested in Sam Bennett, right? You know, the Scotty Scheffler group is a feature group with Max Homa, and they go to this amateur, and he birdies 1, which is a very challenging hole at Augusta, and he eagles 2. So he goes birdie eagle to start the week.
Great way to start
the Masters, which is pretty incredible. Ends up, like I said, shoot 68-68. Struggles a little bit on the weekend. Shot 76 on the 3rd round, 74 on the 4th round to finish T16 in that top 20. So the first amateur to be in the top 20 since Ryan Moore back in 2016. So pretty good odds for the amateur there. One thing I want to talk about with him though is some of his remarks after the 2nd round. You know, he shot 68-68, was a couple back of Koepka and Rahm after that 2nd round, and he was talking about, he was saying he was going to be able to chase down the leaders. You know, I've done this before. You know, I played in big tournaments like this and been able to come back and control them. And everyone was kind of like, whoa, this is really interesting remarks from the amateur. Even went on to say, it's golf, not a golf swing. I've done the right things this week. I'm more experienced than these other guys, talking about the other amateurs. And he definitely backed up his play. I mean, all the other amateurs missed the cut, so he was the low amateur in the tournament.
Oh, yeah.
But what do you have to say about Sam Bennett's comments, after that 2nd round?
Talk that talk.
Yeah.
I like it. Like we don't mind, we don't bat an eye when we listen to pros who aren't Jon Rahm, who aren't Max Homa, who aren't Scotty Scheffler, talk a little smack, and we think it's awesome. Yeah. I saw a lot of people online kind of, pushing back on the amateur just because he's an amateur, just saying that stuff just because he's an amateur. To me, I like it. It's, if we're talking about growing the game, making the game a little more interesting, a little more fiery, a little more peppery, you need that stuff, right? Like you need that kind of like bulletin board material, if nothing else, for the other guys who are playing around him. And, if he doesn't back it up, if his career, God forbid, just goes up in smoke over the next couple of years, well, so what? Then him saying what he said at the Masters will definitely be the thing that people remember. But if he's able to turn around and back it up, and do something over the next 2 to 3 years, which it seems he will. I don't think anybody could look at his game, what he's done over the last 2 years now in late collegiate and then this in the Masters, and say that this guy isn't going to be a force to be reckoned with in the next 2 to 3 years.
Right. He's already 23 years old. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him go pro here pretty soon.
Yeah.
There's no reason for him to really keep playing college golf, right? He's already 23 years old. So I expect to see Sam Bennett's name on the leaderboards. Another thing I don't really like about him is he's a little bit slow. He takes a lot of time over the golf ball, which if you remember the men's amateur for last year, that was a big talking point between him because he takes a really long time to play. And that's something we've been talking about with slow play this week. So we'll see what happens with him. He's got to find a way to kind of pick up the pace a little bit because he does stand over the golf ball for a good amount of time.
Everybody. Yeah. And that, again, back to the issue of the PGA Tour really just needing to get a hold on this thing. Agreed. and get that fixed. Tiger, poor guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Made the cut though. He battled. He really did battle in those first 2 rounds. He had, due to the rain, he had to come out early on Saturday morning. Temperature was in the 40s. It was pouring rain. He was able to shoot a couple over par that day and get in at 3 over. He got a little help from his friend Justin Thomas, who was able to, he really finished even way more poorly than Tiger. Yeah. Able to finish and move that cut line to 3 over to accept Tiger into that cut. So now Tiger, 23 appearances as a pro at the Masters. He's made the cut every single time.
Undefeated.
That's pretty darn impressive. The only time he's missed the cut is when he was an amateur there at the Masters really long time ago. So pretty impressive by Tiger. He did end up withdrawing from the tournament on that 3rd round. They suspended play for the day at about 3:00 on Saturday. So on Sunday morning, they were going to come out at 8:30 and play. Again, it was in the 40s and some chances of rain. And Tiger re-aggravated that plantar fasciitis on Saturday. We saw the clips of him going around of really struggling to even walk. So he ended up withdrawing, which I think is a great move from Tiger. Why go play on Sunday in the terrible weather with that re-aggravated plantar fasciitis when you don't really need to? You have so many strokes off the lead. What's really the point of him going back out there and trying?
Yeah, and why play what would have been, I think, like 27 or 29 holes?
Yeah, it would have been a lot of holes.
I mean, that would have just been there. I don't think even if it were 85 degrees and sunny, I don't know that he would have been able to make that happen in one.
Yeah, he re-aggravated that plantar fasciitis. We saw him on 17 up that hill. He was really
barely walk
with a limp up the hill. So, but it's just good to see him back. And we're gonna have the next major championship, the PGA, in May here in our backyards in Rochester, New York. Do you think he comes to Rochester in May to play?
Yeah, no. And I think I said it to you a couple of weeks ago on the pod here. I don't think he's going to play.
Yeah.
I think Rochester, New York in May. I think
it's a hilly course too. It's not flat.
Yeah, and frankly, I think you have a better chance of getting the kind of weather that we saw Saturday and Sunday.
Right.
At Augusta.
Also could
be 3 or 4 days a week.
Next couple of days up here is going to be 80, so you really don't know, especially in Rochester in May.
The odds are certainly better of us having 4 straight days of 50 to 55 degrees and cloudy and rain that first week of May than it is getting, 3 or 4 straight days of 70 to 80 degrees, which I think is probably optimal for him. Like, I think that 70 to 85 degree range is where he wants to be playing his golf at this point in his career.
So much easier to activate his body when it's warm like that.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think he's going to play the PGA. And also, I just don't think he hasn't historically played that well at Oak Hill. So I don't think there's any reason for him to go there. Do you think there's a chance we see him?
I think I'm a little bit more optimistic than you. I'm about that 50-50 chance that he can play. The weather is certainly big. We'll just see how he trends with that plantar fasciitis. I mean, the PGA is not far away, right? It's a month away or 6 weeks away. So yeah, we'll see that coming up quick. Hopefully, we'll hear some news out of Tiger Woods' camp. They asked him, or his agent, I should say, if he was going to play the PGA Championship. He said, "We're taking it day by day." So we'll see if Tiger plays what we hope to play, because we'll be in attendance at Oak Hill Country Club in Rochester here pretty soon.
Yeah, and one thing I will say about the PGA Championship, I hope for everybody's sake that the broadcast is better than what we got this past week. Good Lord. So your thoughts on the broadcast, TV quality. What were you watching, and what maybe left you a little disappointed?
So first off, I'll preface it with this is the Masters, so you're just not going to see as much TV coverage as you are for any other tournament. The Masters does a really good job, might be not the right term, but they really can limit what is being shown. They only have coverage 4 or 5 at the max hours a day. All their other coverage comes from the feature groups on Masters app, which is incredible, by the way. We'll get to talking about the Masters app here in a little bit, but I had a really big problem with a bunch of other golf fans did too on Saturday. They had to finish their round in the morning, which they televised, the second round. And then they went back out for the third round. The leaders teed off at about 1:30 p.m. Broadcast coverage didn't start till 3 p.m. So you could not watch the Masters, the final group, on TV until 3 o'clock, about into the back 9 at that point. And then they didn't put the group in feature groups. So Brooks and Koepka and Sam Bennett was playing. Actually, no, Sam Bennett wasn't playing with them. They were playing essentially in the dark. I felt like I was in the Stone Ages. I had to go, on surfing Twitter. I'm searching kind of the results to try to find some live kind of look-ins and stuff, videos and stuff like that, because it's just ridiculous. You couldn't turn on your TV and watch them, which really made me mad, because that's all I wanted to do at that point at 1:30 on Saturday was watch the leaders play golf.
That is literally everything. And I don't care what tournament it is. I don't care what the circumstances are. In 2023, with golf having the amount of energy that it has, the focus of every single network, tournament director, and anybody else who has any say about what's being broadcast where, the focus needs to be put as much golf in as many places as possible, period.
Agreed.
All of the good, you mentioned how awesome the app was, the app experience. The app and the website were great if you wanted to follow an individual player. It was fantastic. But if you just wanted an all-inclusive broadcast quality experience, you couldn't get it anywhere.
Right.
Except for in the windows when it was on. And what's made worse by this is the weather. The weather made everything worse because by the time it finally came on, Friday and Saturday, I believe, play was called and suspended for the day within an hour of the broadcast beginning.
Saturday was about 15 minutes. Yeah. So everyone griped about it not being on, and then 15 minutes of it on, they're calling it.
So, I mean, that is just, it can't happen. I understand it's the Masters. They play by their own rules. I get it. But if you're the game of golf and you don't want the Masters to evolve, like kind of be relegated into this weird hoity-toity event that casual golf fans can't get behind, then you need to do something very different. You need to make it more engaging, period.
Right. Yeah.
And like it just needs show more golf.
If you want to watch a certain player, it's awesome. You can see every single player, every single shot they hit every single day, and they have AI narration now. Did you have a chance to look at that?
Yeah, I did. It's interesting. Like all of those things are so interesting because they're different and they're pushing the envelope, but it's like you're pushing the envelope in areas where you don't need to, because really the only thing anybody wants is like more complete broadcast coverage.
Right. And I should be able to just turn my TV on and watch the golf. I shouldn't have to go on the app. I mean, the app to watch some of it's okay. Watching some feature groups on Thursday morning at 8:00. I understand that all can't be on the broadcast, but I want to watch the final group on Saturday play their the first 9. I don't think that's too much to ask for, to be able to turn on your TV and watch it.
Yeah. And even more frustrating is seeing that, we go to suspended play and we've got Jim Nantz or whoever's calling on, I believe, Friday, and then on Saturday again, we've got hours of coverage where they've clearly been calling it. Like,
yeah, exactly.
You've stocked away this stuff when you could have just been broadcasting it live. Like,
but I don't want to watch
jump
at that point because it already happened. Like,
like it's over.
I've been following around on the Masters app, so I know that he makes par here. I don't need to watch it.
So it's just like that kind of stuff really needs to be addressed. I don't want to harp on it beyond that too much. I think the technical stuff that they added is cool. I know you like the AI.
Yeah, it's fun.
I like the AI. It's different. It's kind of like, I don't know how much of a long-term application that really has, but it's nice if you're not necessarily staring at the screen all the time to still get the audible breakdown of like what's happening. Right. So
that'll only get better too.
It is.
It mispronounces a lot of names. It says Scotty Schieffler instead of Scotty Scheffler,
right?
Stuff like that. But that can only get better. It's the first year they've ever done AI narration, so I thought it was pretty successful for their first go around.
And you almost had a great weekend with a little bit of betting on what was going down. Obviously, you had Brooks.
Yep, I had Brooks. I had $5 on Brooks plus 4,400. Your friends and me, I was talking about it all day, and then Sunday it was just kind of pain watching him kind of not play well, and he didn't make a single putt, didn't hit very good shots, so we'll have to try again next time on that. But it's another week, and Nate picked another loser outright winner, so we'll wait to see when I can get my first one this year.
That'll happen. We did get a little bit of breaking news this morning. Will Zalatoris, who withdrew before his first round actually began, announced that he underwent back surgery. Fairly, I don't want to call it a super serious procedure because it's not, but it is one that's going to require him to miss the remainder of the season. He said in a tweeted statement that he was most likely going to be back by the fall.
I think so, yep.
So he said he looked forward to seeing everyone in the fall, which I think means he's going to be back. So, I guess hopefully good, right? Because I think biggest fear with watching him over the last couple of years has just been, you're seeing kind of the Jason Day signs where you're worried about his long-term, because he's such a good personality for the game.
Right.
And obviously a great player.
Too. Yeah.
You'd hate to see that kind of situation replay itself. But what are your thoughts on the Zalatoris situation?
It's good to see him step back and get that surgery, right? Not try to play through it. I know it's really hard to shut yourself down for, a huge part of the season. We're not far into it, but it's good that he made that decision, and hopefully he gets better off of it because like you said, Josh, we're going to miss him on the tour. A really good personality, really good player of the game too. So definitely going to miss him on tour, but all I got to say is just good luck, Wiz. Good luck Will, and hopefully you get back soon. We'd like to see you on tour.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we also saw Rory withdrew from the RBC Heritage this weekend. That's the first. I would assume there's going to be a couple more withdraws, only because of the Masters. And I don't know how many of the guys are going to necessarily want to jump right back in. This might be one of the weeks where they flex that 1 week that they can miss. Maybe.
Yeah, but Rory's already done that this year. He missed the Century early in the year, an elevated event.
Yeah.
And now he's missing another elevated event. What we heard was that you could only miss one.
Yeah.
So is Rory hurt? He didn't play well at the Masters, obviously, with that missed cut. Is Rory just doesn't want to play because, he's Rory McIlroy. They're not going to reprimand him at all. You would know it for sure. So it's going to be really interesting to see in these next couple of days if Rory's got an injury, because that would really be sad and really be tough for the tour if Rory has to undergo any sort of surgery.
Yeah, absolutely. And can't reprimand the commissioner. You can't reprimand the de facto commissioner of the PGA Tour. All right. Hey, that is going to do it for this edition of Out of Bounds. We'll be back on Wednesday with a preview of the RBC Heritage. You can follow us on TikTok and Instagram for more golf news. And be sure to subscribe to our new YouTube channel. As always, whether it's down the middle or out of bounds, keep on swinging.
You've been listening to Out of Bounds. If it's coverage, debate, or discussion of pro and local golf, we'll be talking about it. Be sure to visit the website at fingerlakes1.com. Find us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at OutOfBoundsFL1. See you next time on Out of Bounds.